Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents My Daughter Left the Nest and Returned an S-Rank Adventurer, Volume 2, by Mojikakiya, translated by Roy Nukia, narrated by Derek Shoales. Chapter 13. The Candle Faintly Crackled. The candle faintly crackled as it burned with a blue flame, a clear indication of its magical nature. Its sconce adorned the stone walls of a hut so small that it would have felt cramped if even 4 people crowded into it. The room, which had no windows and just one thick wooden door which was firmly shut, had the oppressive, gloomy atmosphere of a sinner's prison cell. There were hardly any furnishings in the room, only a wooden table in the center and a wooden chair facing it. A man wearing white robes sat in the chair before a crystal ball placed on the table. A figure was projected onto the crystal, though it was merely a faceless shadow without discernible expressions. While letter writing was the main form of correspondence, it was also possible to send messages through certain crystals which were refined into spherical shapes. By pouring mana into them, it became possible to synchronize one with other, far-off crystals. Unfortunately, they were quite difficult to produce, and it took a massive amount of mana to send even a brief message. Crystal communication usually cost a gold coin every dozen or so seconds, and yet the robed man had been speaking to the shadow for quite some time now.
"This was a failure on my end," he said reluctantly, "but that also means your prediction missed the mark." "We should have spread a few more decoys," the shadow replied. "However, I'm a bit surprised that someone managed to defeat Baal. I didn't care if anyone found him, as I figured none could best him, and that we were safe as long as Graham stayed holed up in Elven territory." Whatever happens to him, it's impossible to annihilate him completely. Baal has lost his strength, but once he recovers, we still have our uses for him. Did you get the key?" "No, I did not. We must have been fed false information." "It just never goes our way. I won't fall into the same pitfalls as he did." "Be careful. We've got the Vienna cult sniffing around for us now." "Wait, I have visitors."
Just as the man stood, someone busted down the door. A glimmering silver blade flew at the man in the robe. He deftly stuffed the magic crystal into his bag as he leaped to avoid it. There were 5 assailants in total. They all wore the same clothes and covered their faces with masks. 2 had entered the room while the rest guarded the entrance. In an instant, it looked as though he had been cornered.
"You're really pulling out the stops to catch one guy."
He snapped his fingers and suddenly the candles went out. This abrupt spell of darkness caused his assailants to freeze for a moment. The man's white robe flickered in the dark. A pale light poured out from it, and the closest attacker fell with a spurt of blood. However, his other foes were not deterred by this. In the blink of an eye, they had reorganized their formation. The gap in their ranks was filled, and the man was on the defensive once more. He nimbly pulled his body back to dodge another sword.
"I don't have time to waste on the likes of you."
The man began to chant swiftly. His hands emanated a pale blue light. The next instant, one of his assailants unleashed his sword. It was so sudden that the robed man was frantic to dodge. The blade grazed his robe and tore through. Out from this rift tumbled a black crystal.
"Blast! So that was your aim."
He thrust his hands forward to unleash his magic, but his attackers were one step ahead of him. A sword smashed through the gemstone, kicking up a cloud of black smoke that swallowed the room whole. Whatever escaped through the door coalesced into a single mass and took flight. But still, the man fired his magic. The pale light from his hands raced around the room like a blade, and by the time it was finished, only the man in the robe was left. The candle flickered to light. It was dreadfully quiet. The cold stillness of death was all that remained of the clamor.
"They got one up on me."
The man irritably kicked one of the corpses at his feet. He lifted his hand and began chanting under his breath. Little by little, the smoke remaining in the room gathered before him, once again forming a black gemstone. The man pinched it out of the air and stared at it closely. It seemed to have dulled somewhat.
"Looks like some of it got away. I never thought they would be this well informed. I'll need to rethink our strategy."
Stuffing the gemstone into his pocket, the man left the room with his robes fluttering in his wake. The children flocked around the wagon loaded with gifts, and marveled at the sweets they couldn't come across in Turnera. Not far away, Angeline fished through her belongings, presenting them one by one to Belgrieve.
This is the mulled wine I like best. You put these spices and honey in it, then drink it. It's delicious.
I see. You're old enough to drink now, Angie.
Yeah.
Seeing his daughter so grown up, Belgrieve offered a happy yet lonesome smile. The girl proudly showing off everything she brought was definitely Angie. She had been waist high when she left, but now she stood around chest level. Her short hair had grown out, and while she still had a bit of childish innocence, her features had matured. He stared at the back of the gold plate she had given him. It was about the size of his palm and proved she was an S-rank adventurer.
I guess this is the hard part of being a parent.
What's wrong, Dad?
Just talking to myself.
While Belgrieve sunk into his thoughts, Angeline pouted with puffed-up cheeks. All of a sudden, she pounced at his chest, pushing her face in and nuzzling.
The smell of firewood and hay. You really do smell nice, Dad.
The things my daughter says. I guess you're still a spoiled girl no matter how much you've grown.
I'll always be your daughter.
Good grief.
Belgrieve patted her head with a troubled smile. While not perfectly straight, her hair was glossy and beautiful, completely unlike his own red mane, though this was natural since they were not blood relatives. He turned to look at Anessa and Miriam, who were standing back in a daze.
Thank you for coming with her. It must have been a long and tiring journey.
Snapping to their senses, they both waved their hands in refutation.
Oh, not at all, Anessa stammered. It's nice to have a laid-back trip once in a while. It's the first time I've seen Angie like that. She really must love her father,
Miriam said. Belgrieve scratched his cheek.
It didn't used to be this serious, but it's been a long time.
5 years. 5 whole years. No, almost 6 years even. I'm surprised I held out so long. I deserve some applause.
Angeline circled around him and jumped onto his back. She placed her chin atop his head, grinding it against his hair. She was acting like a child, no more and no less. Was this really Angeline? Anessa had a forced smile on her face while Miriam grinned.
She did that whenever I carried her on my back,
Belgrieve recalled, and for a while he let her do as she pleased. Ultimately, though, he wrapped his arms behind his back and prodded her head away. She gleefully cried out as he did.
Angie, these souvenirs are good and all, but make sure you get your own luggage into the house.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Anne, Mary, get your things in the house. Yeah, sure. Got it.
And so the 3 girls hoisted up their travel bags that were still in the wagon.
I wasn't really expecting them, so the place is a mess,
Belgrieve thought to himself, but there was little he could do about it. The children left once they had been given sugar candy. That would have to be it for today's sword training. Belgrieve looked at the mountainous heap of presents, wondering what he would do about it. That night there would be a village conference to discuss the road maintenance, so perhaps he could distribute them there. Compared against Angeline's excitement, Belgrieve looked relatively calm, but his mind was a mess.
She's here for so long. I want to treat her to a nice dinner. No, there's the conference tonight. Will I have time to cook? We don't have a bath, but she's been on a long journey, so I'll need to warm enough water for her to wipe herself down. I didn't think she would come with friends. I need to find someplace for them to sleep. Right, I can get some straw from the shed, and I don't have any spare blankets, so I'll need to borrow some from Carrie.
In the midst of these thoughts, Carrie and Barnes sprinted over. They were both short of breath, Carrie's stomach swaying as he ran.
Hey, Belle, is it true that Angie's back?
Yeah, it's true. She came with her adventurer friends from the capital.
Well, ain't that swell? This calls for a celebration.
Carrie rejoiced as if it were his own daughter who returned.
He's a good friend,
Belgrieve mused with a laugh. Angeline returned from the house.
Dad, Anna Mary are... Oh, Mr. Carey.
Carrie's eyes opened wide upon seeing how Angeline had grown.
Oh, Angie. Now look who's all grown up now. Are you doing well for yourself?
Yeah, I'm always doing great. Did you put on some weight?
More or less. It's a sign of happiness,
Carrie said jovially, patting his potbelly. Barnes opened and closed his mouth as he looked at Angie from head to toe. He seemed to be in complete disbelief. Are you really that runt, Angie? Huh? Who the hell are you? Angeline tilted her head. Barnes scowled. You don't even remember me? I'm Barnes, Carrie's son. Seeing him fly into a rage, Angeline mischievously giggled. Kidding. I remember. Good old Barnes, the boy who always lost to me in swordplay even though he was older. Pfft. You little... Yep, that's definitely Angie. Despite his furrowed brow, Barnes gave a resigned laugh. Belgrieve called over to Angeline.
So, what's this about Anne and Mary?
Oh, right. Do we have any place for them to sleep? Think we have enough straw?
Right. I was thinking about that, too. Hey, Carrie, do you have a few spare blankets lying around? If you do, I'd like to borrow enough for 3.
Sure, I don't mind. I have more blankets than I know what to do with. Barnes, go fetch a few. Fetch enough that the girls don't even have to think about getting cold.
Barnes nodded and ran off. Angeline held out a paper sack.
Mr. Carey, this is for you.
Oh, thank you, Angie.
It's a rare spice. Oh, and here are some vegetable seeds, and this is sugar candy.
She picked out one item after another, proudly handing them to Carrie with a story accompanying each of them. Carrie heard them all out, humoring each tale with an exaggerated reaction. Belgrieve, meanwhile, retrieved straw from the shed and brought it inside. The house was not particularly large, nor did it have any separate interior rooms. There was only one large chamber divided by shelves and dressers. In the back was a large fireplace where the smoke still rose from the embers. Near the fireplace was a pile of straw, which would become a bed once a blanket was spread over it. Inessa and Miriam stood there, looking around curiously. The girls had been born and raised an orphan, so these village houses were an oddity.
I'm sorry it's such a mess. I didn't think I'd have any visitors.
They turned towards him.
Not at all. We're the ones who barged in. Honestly, even though there are a lot of things here, it's tidier than our place. On the contrary, I'm ashamed, or how should I put it? Right? It's because our Anne here just strips off her clothes and leaves them lying around. Bah, that would be you, Mary. Wrong, I would never do that.
Seeing the two of them bicker, Belgrieve smiled and began laying the straw flat in an open space.
You two get along well, he observed.
Inessa suddenly turned red.
I'm sorry for such an unsightly display.
Not at all. You really are a diligent one.
Huh?
It was in Angie's letters. She also said Mary was a little out of it, but fun to talk to.
That's not true at all. Angie's pretty airheaded herself.
That may be true. Thank you for being her friends. It's because of you two that she didn't have to be lonely and orphan. You have my gratitude,
Belgrieve said with a grin. He said it so earnestly that both Inessa and Miriam were left fidgeting awkwardly. There was a rattling as Belgrieve pulled out some chairs. He lived alone, but had 4 chairs for what it was worth. He had the occasional visitor, after all, and was glad he kept them around. He motioned the two of them to sit down. Angeline's conversation with Carrie was growing even more animated, and he didn't want to rain on her parade.
Here, have a seat. I'll brew some tea.
I'll help out.
No need. You must be tired. Just take it easy for today.
Oh, okay. Then I'll just kick back and relax.
They sat, watching Belgrieve's back as he brewed tea by the fireplace. His movements were slow but skillful. The houses of active and retired adventurers generally did not feel lived in, because they usually dined out and had little in the way of personal belongings. Inessa and Miriam could handle most housework thanks to their upbringing in the orphanage, but Belgrieve moved so naturally in his home that it was hard to believe he was once in the same trade, though there was a tapping sound on the floor whenever he was walking. Inessa spoke up.
You used to be an adventurer, right?
Technically, yes. But this happened to me quite early on,
Belgrieve said, showing his right leg. It had been replaced with a simple prosthetic from the knee down. It was a sturdy peg carved from oak wood. Oiled and polished, it had a glossy finish. Though there were scratches here and there from the years, it was clear he treated it well. Even though a glance was enough to tell the leg was fake, Belgrieve's movements were hardly any different than someone with foot intact. So much so, it was as if the peg leg was an illusion. He returned with teacups on a tray and sat across from them.
I was an adventurer for 2 years. 3 years at most. I was E rank when I retired. That would make you both my superiors in the business. He awkwardly laughed as he offered the tea. This was made from the lent leaves that grow around these parts. I hope it's to your liking.
A pleasant aroma wafted off the wooden cups in a puff of steam. The girls blew on them carefully before taking a sip. Hot, but not too bitter, with a faint sweetness underlying it. It was as if the young leaves had been dissolved straight into their cups.
Ah, not too shabby. I've never had it before. Bitter, but a little sweet, too.
Glad to hear it. Given the season, I don't have much to serve with it, but...
Please don't mind us. But you really are kind, mister. I expected someone a lot more frightening when I heard the name Red Ogre.
Red Ogre again.
Belgrieve frowned. He was hearing it a lot more frequently these days, but he himself had no idea what it meant. Even Sasha and Helvetica were calling him that, and the villagers were teasing him with the name too.
Where did you hear that Red Ogre thing from?
Angie said it.
Huh?
That was when Angeline entered the house.
Hey, you two. No flirting with Dad without my permission.
Angie, a moment, please.
Belgrieve beckoned for her. She rushed over like an excited puppy, taking a seat right beside him.
What is it, Dad?
What is this Red Ogre thing about?
Angeline triumphantly smiled.
It's the moniker I thought up for you, Dad. Isn't it cool?
No. I mean, Angie, you've been spreading that?
Belgrieve looked at Anessa and Miriam, shocked. Anessa gave a wry smile and nodded.
Angie tells everyone she meets. You're her father, and you didn't know about it?
Belgrieve gaped, lost for words. Miriam giggled.
There isn't anyone in Orphans Guild who hasn't heard of the father of the Black-Haired Valkyrie, an incredibly strong former adventurer named Belgrieve the Red Ogre. Right, Anne? Yes. The reinstated S ranks and even the guildmaster have their eyes on you.
A moment passed.
Angie?
Yeah?
Perhaps thinking he would praise her, Angeline looked straight at him with a full smile on her face.
What should I do?
Belgrieve groaned, holding his head. Chapter 14. Of course, Belgrieve was an adventurer. Of course, Belgrieve was an adventurer, and it wasn't as if he was completely against having his name known among the high-ranking heroes. His younger days were spent taking on any job, no matter how small, to put food on the table. But a part of him did aspire.
Someday, maybe even I could be someone,
he would tell himself. He was 42 now, but the feeling hadn't completely disappeared. Though he had given up and returned to Turner at the loss of his right leg, he still trained every day as an adventurer would. He had gone far beyond what would be considered rehabilitation to ensure his artificial leg didn't impede him, and he was proud of the effort he put in. Thanks to this, he could move around freely, and after retiring at E rank, he could take on monsters of C and B rank on his own. Perhaps he had never given up on himself as an adventurer, apart from his pure desire to protect the village. Perhaps something inside him was still kicking and screaming, yearning to compete with his old party members who had continued on his adventures. Thus, he didn't hate receiving recognition. It could bolster his confidence and get him back on his feet after he failed to find any worth in himself.
But this just ain't it.
What's wrong, Dad? Do you have a headache?
Angeline frantically stroked his head. Her hands were gentle and caring. It was clear she was concerned about him. Angeline did not have any ill intent, surely, but that only made it all the more troublesome for him. He did resent having unknowingly been evaluated far beyond what he was capable of. However, that came about from Angeline's good intentions. He got the feeling it would be wrong to holler at her without first hearing what she had to say. Though he was soft on his daughter to begin with, and couldn't have brought himself to raise his voice to her in any case. Carrie popped his head through the doorway.
Oi, Bell! You're not to come to the conference.
Belgrieve lifted his head from his hands.
Huh? Why?
I mean, Angie's just come back, so I don't think you'd be up for sitting down to a calm, level-headed discussion.
Ugh.
Gary had a point. Even if Belgrieve did join in, his mind was in such turmoil that he would be completely tuned out. He was happy Angeline had returned, of course, but now there was a separate problem entirely. Belgrieve awkwardly scratched his head.
Sorry about that, Carrie.
Hey, don't worry about it. We can't rely on you for everything. Hey, Barnes, quit loitering around and get in here.
Dragged along by his father, Barnes entered sullenly with blankets in hand.
Where do you want them, Mr. Bell? Could you lay them over the straw? What's wrong?
Barnes had been staring transfixed at Nessa and Miriam until Belgrieve's question snapped him out of it, and so he brought the blankets over. In answer to the perplexed look he saw on Belgrieve's face, he whispered,
I guess girls from the capital are as beautiful as they say.
Hey now, Rita would cry if she heard that.
Why you bring up Bria's name? What's she got to do with this?
Barnes hastily draped the blankets over the straw before running out of the house, red to the ears.
Carrie looked at him and sighed. Pathetic, that boy. What a sight he makes compared to Angie.
I don't see the problem. You were like that too once upon a time.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, eh? You got me there. Not that it matters, I guess. Take it easy with your daughter, Red Ogre Belgrieve,
Carrie teasingly said, and left in high spirits. Belgrieve was left scratching his head once again. Monikers were the sort of thing that stuck after being arbitrarily proposed by God only knows who. The fact that Angeline made it up out of nothing did not make it any less valid. But was it not strange to stick such a moniker to a middle-aged farmer who was neither an adventurer nor a soldier? Perhaps it would be fine if he had accomplished anything to merit it, but Belgrieve couldn't recall doing anything of the sort. He was definitely failing to live up to his name, or rather his fame, and that gave him an itchy feeling.
Did I do something wrong?
Angeline asked timidly when she noticed the inscrutable look on his face.
Dad, did I do something you didn't like?
She was on the verge of tears. How could he possibly get angry at that face? Belgrieve wryly shrugged.
No. Well, how should I put it? I know you were thinking for my sake, Angie, but your dad hasn't done anything to earn everyone's praise.
The only achievements he was aware of involved beating fiends that were B rank at best. Perhaps they could make a big deal out of him as the one who raised Angeline, but her achievements as an adventurer were all her own doing. He was proud of her, but did not see himself claiming any part of her glory. Watching Belgrieve's reactions, Anessa and Miriam cocked their heads to the side.
So he's not as amazing as Angie makes him out to be? Angie was just letting her imagination run wild?
That's not it at all! Angeline rose in a rage. The two girls inadvertently flinched, shivering. My dad is incredible! I told you, didn't I? I've never managed to strike him in a duel.
That was 5 years ago, Angie.
It doesn't matter if it's 5 years or 10. It doesn't! Angeline cut Belgrieve off.
No, 5 years does matter quite a bit, Belgrieve thought.
Meanwhile, Angeline tapped on the table with a sullen look on her face. If you're not convinced, let me show you. Dad.
Yes?
I request a sparring match.
Oh, sure. Huh? Wait, Angie, shouldn't you rest? You were never good with long journeys.
I'm fine. Just come with me, Angeline said, leaving the house with her sword.
Wow, exclaimed Miriam. I can finally see his rumored swordsmanship. I can't wait.
Anessa nodded.
Both Angie and Sasha spoke highly of him. This will be a good learning experience.
And with that, the girls were out the door. Not quite knowing what was going on, Belgrieve grabbed the sword leaning against the wall and cocked his head.
What exactly has been going on since I've last seen her?
Dad, come at me seriously. The sky that had been so clear moments before was now mottled with white clouds. It was neither dark enough for rain, nor bright enough for the sun to cast strong shadows. The ground was a little damp from the snowmelt. One careless moment would send someone tumbling. Father and daughter stood opposed in the yard. Belgrieve still seemed somewhat bewildered, while Angie was clearly seething about something. Her anger was not directed at Belgrieve per se, though she was a little irritated to see the man she had always known as a pillar of reliability smiling so uncertainly. She wanted her beloved father to remain the man she believed him to be, even if a part of her understood just how unreasonable and selfish that was. On the other hand, Belgrieve, while confused, found himself surprisingly calm the moment he stood there holding a sword.
It must be all the years catching up to me.
He smiled bitterly, though he felt those years were saving him now. He was weak, incomparable to an active S rank like Angeline. In the first place, he wasn't even an adventurer. Perhaps this would be a farce. Perhaps he would disappoint Angeline. Once that happened, maybe she wouldn't idolize him anymore. However, children were quick to surpass their parents. Many of the children who grew up in the village would carry on the farm work as well as, if not better than, their predecessors.
Is this a path every parent has to tread?
He muttered to himself. Meanwhile, Angeline took a stance with her sheathed sword. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration of the fluidity of her stance. She had grown into a splendid warrior. Angeline had shown glimpses of her talent from a young age, and by the time she was 10, she had nearly landed a blow on him several times. When this happened, Belgrieve would train himself even harder than before. That was probably his youthful stubbornness at work, the part of him which refused to lose to a little girl. It was perhaps for that reason that the sword skills he had once nearly given up on had been polished further than he ever thought possible for him. But this was different. Angeline had faced off against many adventurers and fiends while an orphan. Her skills were presumably greater than he could possibly imagine. There would be no regrets if he lost. But he wasn't going down without a fight. Belgrieve took his stance. He stood square to her, and at a glance, it seemed as if he was completely unguarded. However, his sword arm vigilantly reacted to every slight movement from his daughter, swishing back and forth ever so slightly. It was as if he was inviting her to charge. Angeline was delighted to see this. He hadn't dulled in the slightest. He really was the same father she had so admired. A strange sense of tension hung over the yard. They trembled as if the threads holding them up were being pulled to the snapping point. Even Ines and Miriam, who were merely on the sidelines, found themselves watching with bated breath. They, too, were powerful fighters who could understand a clash between the strong. Belgrieve could hear his heart beating detestably loud and slow. It felt as if mere seconds were lasting a lifetime. A drop of melted snow fell from the roof. Belgrieve jerked, his eyes shifted ever so slightly, and Angeline took that chance to move. She was fast. He thought she had only stepped with her right leg, yet in that brief instant she had already kicked off several times and closed the distance in the blink of an eye. From her low stance, she swung her sword upwards with fearsome momentum. However, Belgrieve casually avoided her charge, a disappointed look on his face as he struck her on the head. "If," she yelped, hunkering down. Belgrieve looked over her perplexed. "Angie, I keep telling you not to go for obvious feints, and you haven't fixed that at all. Then there's her starting move, stepping in with her right foot and slicing up. It's a bad habit of yours." You seriously hit me." "Huh? Well, I mean, you told me to take this seriously." She pursed her lips and held out her arms. "Carry me." "You're already 17, aren't you?" "Carry me." While her brow was furrowed, her eyes looked as if they would burst into tears at any moment. Belgrieve shook his head, stooped down, wrapped an arm around her waist, and lifted her up high enough to sit on his shoulder. He couldn't help it. He was soft on his daughter. For some reason, he felt as though they had had this exact same exchange before. For a silent moment, Angeline hugged Belgrieve's head and buried her face in his hair. Eventually, she leaped down to the ground. "One more time. We'll spar again." "I don't mind," he replied with a quizzical gesture of his head. He realized he wasn't so nervous anymore. They stood at a distance again and faced one another. This time Angeline moved immediately. While surprise crossed Belgrieve's face, he parried the first blow, pivoted on his peg leg, and parried. Angeline immediately backed off, but Belgrieve kicked off with his left leg, closing the distance. Reacting swiftly, Angeline was about to leap right, and yet, "Stop letting your eyes give away where you're going to move." Belgrieve once again whacked her before she could react. He swung knowing exactly which way she would go next, and she had no means of avoiding it. "Ah!" she cried out, crouching down again. Belgrieve scratched his cheek and sighed. "Angie, you haven't fixed a single thing I told you to correct." There were tears in Angeline's eyes, yet for some reason she seemed delighted. "See, my dad really is strong." No, I mean, you're..." Belgrieve felt a little let down. Her movements were faster, sharper, and far more polished compared to when she left home. However, no matter how fast and sharp they were still the exact same movements he knew. This was strange. It wasn't supposed to be like this. His eyes wandered as he thought of them.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?